you can go into a neighborhood in the Bronx, into an area that's predominantly immigrants, maybe they're just working class, and you talk to them about their simple bodega order, and it's not just junk food, you know what I mean? Like, these bodegas are providing economical supplement like food and sustenance and life.
You know bodegas, those small, often family-run shops on nearly every corner, chock full of everything you need while moving through life in a city. The makings of your favorite breakfast sandwich, to a hot coffee on the run, to late-night snacks. These spots are more than just stores of convenience. They're the backdrop for a million stories and the pulse of neighborhood life. On today's episode of Food Stories Told, I speak with Chef Paola Velez about her new cookbook, Bodega Bakes, and Paola shares memories of frequenting bodegas in the Bronx as a child and how these small businesses not only provided affordable food, but a sense of community during difficult times. Tune in to hear Paola's story and the insights she shares about food, culture, and her journey as a chef. And Paola, she's not just any guest. She is a talented pastry chef with a knack for turning simple ingredients into something unforgettable. She is funny, relatable, and an amazing storyteller who honors not only her Dominican heritage, but shares snippets of life as a pastry chef and the power and importance of supporting small immigrant-owned businesses. I'm excited for you to hear about the impact of bodegas on her life and how bodegas have been a place that she figured out how much a dollar could stretch and has been a lifeline for her in times of need. It's more than just a breakfast sandwich. It's more than just getting a chopped cheese on your lunch break. And it's more than that very hot coffee. It is about the powerful spaces in our communities that connect us. And while we're chatting today, I want you to think back to your own corner store or bodega. What is the one item you go back for? Or what memory does that place hold for you? And if you haven't checked out your local corner store, you're in luck, because Paola shares her process in thinking about what she wants to order, and she's going to give you some tips. Ready to get started? Let's dive in.
I think for me, a bodega is synonymous with community. You know, I personally don't have a place where I can pinpoint when I was like, oh, I'm in a bodega. When I was little, I just know that whenever that self-realization that like toddlers or kids have, when they're like, what is this? Where am I? Who are you? Right? Like, it definitely must have happened in a bodega, because I remember like being little and being like, what is this place? Like, what is this? No, really, you know? And it was just like a lot, but at the same time, it was just like normal, right? Like my mom back in the day, she used to play like scratchy tickets, and like I would go and she'd be like, okay, you have $1, like figure out what you're gonna get, you know?
Back when $1 could do a lot of things.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can get at the very least 5 good items.
Ooh.
But if you're really crafty, you can get up to 10, you know?
Ooh.
And when you're little, like 5-cent candy seems like a lot of candy, you know? So 25 cents of 5-cent candy, that's a lot. But I had bodegas where they would have penny candy too, you know? So like, I know kids nowadays probably aren't even growing up with that, you know? Which is wild for me to even think. Like, they won't ever get to experience that, like, first introduction to quick math, you know, like your math had to be on point for you to be like, all right, I want 5 of these candies, 10 of these, and 1 of these. I want a milk, like, jug, or like one of those like 25-cent fruit juices, and I want 2 bags of chips, you know. And you can make out like a bandit, or like if you were feeling like really lofty, like, hey guys, I have $2 today. You go to the Chinese food store right next door usually. At least that's how I grew up. In all of the bodegas that I would frequent, there was like either across the street or right next door, there was like a Chinese restaurant. You'd get $1 egg roll, and then you get like 50-cent like sour straws or something, and then you divide your chips and your juice. Or if you were going to the library that day, you skip out on juice completely, and you put candy in your mouth when you drink water. That's absolutely juice.
That is a hack. Yes. I love that.
So like the bodega really taught me how to like reason, how to think about what I'm doing, right? It's not just I want candy. It's like, okay, what kind of candy and how can I get to where I want to get, with a limited budget. So for me, bodega is, at least a New York kid's introduction to like thought and reasoning and just like decision making. Like you had to be really good at like making decisions, and you had to identify what you liked early on, because like you don't want to waste your only dollar on something that you're like, ew, this sucks,
I love that. I'll just say my first bodega, for me, just because I spent until I was 9, I was in Somerville, which is like right outside of Boston. The neighborhood I was in, we had a bodega right across from my dad. He's since passed, but he had a baseball card shop, and so right next door was the bodega. And I remember going in as a little kid with my dollar and looking at the the little bins of the 5 cent. All right, cool. Water. I want some the Mary Jane little the cowtails. I'm trying to make those decisions. I mean, there's also a sense of independence, right? You're making these decisions. You're defining what you like, or there's something big about that.
Yeah, I agree. But I think more so than that, it was like the first place that taught me about grace too, right? Like for these shop owners, like they see us every day. Like either we're walking home from school or it's something that is very close to the house, right? Like sometimes I would go down the hill and like down these steps in the Bronx, and I would have a bodega right by the steps, right? Yeah. And then if you went further, like if you were going right to Van Cortlandt Park, you go down like the loop-de-loop street, and you end up, and you're kind of like by 238-ish street, and there was like a few bodegas there, and each one had different things. Like maybe the bodega right by the train station is more Middle Eastern, and there you could be like, hey, can I get like this like sandwich, right? Like the other day I was reading on Threads, right, and somebody was like making fun of a certain celebrity's bodega order because it just didn't seem like, I'm not going to name that person because I don't want to get a C&D. Apparently people are giving those out like bodega candy. So
yeah, we keep it. Yeah, no names.
Yeah, no names. But people know exactly who I'm talking about if you're from New York or the Bronx. Like, especially if you're from the Bronx, like people would be like, oh, right? Then I'm like, there's no like love loss, or I'm just an innocent bystander in all of this. But I was reading, and they asked like, what kind of bodega order is this, right? And it was like, I can't remember if it was like turkey and maybe it was cheddar with an orange drink, right? And I was like, oh, like people were like, what kind of orange drink? What do you mean, right?
Right, is it Fanta? Is it, are you doing, like, what are you doing?
Right, but I mean, like, for me, I'm like, oh, man, it's orange drink. Like, maybe it's bubbly orange drink, or maybe it's juice orange drink, or maybe it's just orange juice, and that's what she calls orange drink. Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna yuck somebody's memory, right? I thought about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's my bodega order now that I've graduated from, let's say when I was little, from $1 to $5? You know, like my mom's like, here's $5, get yourself something nice. And I'm like, what? Oh my God, and I was always very frugal. Like I would like hoard my little dollars, and I I go to the bodega and have $5, and I'm like, what am I going to get? What's my bodega order, And it's very simple, and I think I actually ate it well into my, like, young adult years. Now, over 30, I have to think about it. Like, I have to be like, am I really willing to risk all these carbs, I would get a Munster on a roll, and those rolls used to cost 25 cents back then, right? Man. So the Munster, you could get either $1 worth or 50 cents worth of Munster, and then I'd get it toasted, right? Overall, like, my sandwich would even out to, like, something like $1, right? So you have, like, your soft, I think it's like a Kaiser roll, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like a regular bodega roll. Let's take a soft roll, and it has, like, maybe a curved cross pattern, maybe like a star pattern. If people, like, grew up eating in bodegas, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But, it's just a roll, so, like, on a roll. And I got that, and it would be $1, and then I would walk over to the cold case where all the drinks were at, and I would get a chocolate nutriment. So that's what I would get. I'd get Munster on a roll toasted with a chocolate nutriment. That was, like, my bodega order. And it's so interesting because, like, a nutriment is a meal replacement, right? But I didn't think of it as, like, such. I just thought it was, like, yummy chocolate milk. Like, it was, like, now thinking back on it, it's like chocolate milk if it had malt in it. So it's like a malted chocolate milk, and it's thicker, so it's, like, really fun to drink. I'd get a little straw. I'd drink it with my Munster roll that's been toasted, and that's how I went about my day, right? I would either have that for breakfast or I'd have it for lunch, Obviously, dinner time was reserved for, like, family and, like, what we would eat together as a family, me and my mom. But it's, like, really interesting, and I think, like, maybe my mom introduced me to nutriments and I didn't know, but we didn't have enough money to have 3 square meals a day, Like, dinner was so important because that was the meal that we could afford, really, So, like, a nutriment was my mom's way of making sure that I got all of my, like, nutrients, right? Whether it had extra fiber or it had more protein or et cetera, right? Like, I don't know. I would have to look at a bottle of nutriment right now and figure it out. But, like, it's so interesting, right? Because it's like for $2, I was able to survive a little bit, And I was very scrawny and bony back then, so, like, my mom was definitely like, you need to eat, bro, But, like, it was difficult, right? Like, to always make ends meet, And I guess I don't talk about this often because it's like, most of the time I'm just focusing on, like, preserving heritage and culture or inspiring a new generation or even older generations to have more pride and honor in our culture aside from what society makes it seem like it's lesser than or not good or whatever, right? Yeah. But, like, when you think back, like, my mom would sacrifice so much, to make sure that bills were paid and rent was paid, and sometimes money didn't stretch far enough for us to have, like, a bunch of food. And with a bodega, I was able to, like, find, like, a lifeline. And a lot of people, even now, right, like, you can go into a neighborhood in the Bronx, you can go into an area that's predominantly immigrants, maybe they're just working class, and you talk to them about their simple bodega order, and it's not just junk food, you know what I mean? Like, these bodegas are providing economical supplement, like food and sustenance and life, I graduated high school at 17, and I graduated culinary school. Well, I went on my externship, and I just stayed in New York after my externship. Like, I went back to the Bronx, and, like, the people that would see me were actually, like, the owners of bodegas, right? Like, either the workers or the owners, because, like, I was waking up earlier than everyone. I was going to sleep later than everyone. And sometimes they could see when I, back then, in 2009, minimum wage was very low already in 2008, 2009. But because I look young, or was very young back then, a lot of restaurants in New York thought they could get away with a lot of things, especially like maybe paying me under the table or not paying me an actual minimum wage, So sometimes I could be working and I could be at $6 an hour, or that week my boss decided, like, hey, you don't deserve a paycheck. Okay. So sometimes it was really difficult, and I didn't want to let my mom know, because she also was like a stay-at-home mom now, So it's just like 2 peas in a pod, but like broke, And it kind of like made me realize everything my mom was going through when I was younger. And it gave me a different appreciation, but also the bodega owners could tell. Like, they could tell by my order or by what I was getting that I was not okay at that moment. Obviously I also am like, that I'm an open book, but like you can see my emotions on my face immediately. So I'm walking into the bodega and I'm pretty sure that I'm bringing like a rain cloud with thunderstorms over my head into the bodega too. And they'd be like, oh, she's going through something, Yeah. So I would place like a modified order. Like maybe if I was always ordering, Munster on a roll, I would ask them, can I just get a butter roll, please? And that's it, right? Like just a butter roll, and I'll go back and I'll drink some tap water in my house, and I would split that butter roll sometimes, so I would eat one half, and then like save the other half and hope that would be enough for dinner, and those bodega owners, even if I didn't frequent the same bodega, they would still remember, and they'd be like, why aren't you getting your usual? And I'm like, oh, no, I want this instead, like, this is what I want or prefer today, and obviously they were like, no, why aren't you getting this, and they'd be like, no, we're going to get you your toasted Munster. Go grab your nutriment. It's also on us.
Oh,
I'll see you again tomorrow, And it was like, it's really unique, right? Like that experience to be in such community with a stranger, right? Because, you don't ask like too many questions. You go in, you place your order, and then you're like, hey, okay, have a good day. I hope, you have a great evening, or, if they're Muslim, you wish them, their happy holidays. If they're Latino or Dominican, you might ask about, like, when are they going back home for, like, a few months, And it's, like, little things, right? And they would ask, obviously, they're like, what do you do? Because your hours are really weird. And I'm like, oh, I'm a chef. Or, well, back then I was like, I'm just a prep cook, or I'm a line cook. And they're like, why don't you come work here? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I could. But also, I want to try to work in these, like, fancy restaurants. And I hope that I can make it, which is a story within itself, because maybe I should have just worked the grill or the plancha at a bodega, and maybe my life would be a little different, a little more at peace. But it's like, that's my general overview and understanding of like bodegas and like why I wrote my cookbook, right? Like, obviously when you're creating a pastry book, you can't be this sad. While I tell the story with, like, a smile on my face, and, like, I reminisce, and I'm like, toasted Munster on a roll, or Munster on a toasted roll, whatever,
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like sometimes people want to escape from that reality as well, so I made sure that I touched upon it a little bit. I gave my respect to bodegas and why I think that they're so important. And then I just kind of cultivated all these treats and staples into a new cultural expression of what I think Dominican food is, or at least Dominican pastries, because we don't actually have a lot of Dominican pastries. We don't have something that people are like, yes. Like, you go to France and, somebody's like, oh, here is a creme brulee, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, yeah, France. Like, you go to DR and you might be like, oh, here's Dominican cake, which is like our crown jewel.
Yep.
Right? Like, we're like, oh, Dominican cake. But at the same time, we're not like, here's this intricate cream puff, or here's this laminated dough that we stuff with sweet goodness, right? So it's like, how can we get a whole culture to feel like they have a little something sweet as well, right? So I worked with Americana cuisine to kind of like influence with some of the flavors, but at the same time I flipped some of the cultural desserts that I think are like unique to us, right? Like habichuela con dulce, which is like a red bean sweet porridge kind of dessert. I believe that we're the only Latin country that uses beans in a sweet application similar to that of Asia. Which is very interesting also.
I'm curious, do you know the origins of that, or if that's part of the Chino population on the island? Like, were the red beans that's the only space I've ever seen red beans in a sweet application?
Well, I can look it up and see, but I think for us, it's actually because of the transatlantic slave trade. It just kind of like an amalgamation of like the Taino Indians and Spanish settlers and the African slaves that came to the Dominican Republic or the island of Hispaniola. That's interesting. Wow. I think for us, there's a lot of erasure of where things come from, because we are kind of like the first settlement that they tried to break down, you're Dominican, so like a lot of it was trying to erase the fact that we even have African ancestry. So like we won't know. We just know that we eat this in the Dominican Republic in like Semana Santa, which is like Easter around that time, which means Holy Week, because Dominican Republic is a very Catholic country. And then we eat it like around Christmas time, which is also very, very Catholic. But then if you move to America, people want to feel that nostalgia when they're working. So you can go to Washington Heights, you can go to certain parts of the Bronx, Fordham Row, and somebody will be selling it, homemade. I absolutely throw caution into the wind, and I'm like, get me 2 cups. Thank you. So, like, I'm like, I don't even know what your house looks like, but I trust you. I trust you.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, give me this unctuous elixir. Thank you. So yeah. So I feel like I say all of this to say, like, bodegas, I pay homage to bodegas and I talk about it, but I also, it's almost like a call to action to see if somebody can start giving a damn about small mom and pop businesses. As we allow landlords and developers to change neighborhoods and areas, and I mean, we see it here in Washington, D.C. all the time where I live now, as they kind of creep in, like, secure all of this quote-unquote cheap real estate because it's not a favorable neighborhood to other folks of different demographics. It's squeezing out the ability for small business owners to be kind like they were to me even just 11 years ago or 12 years ago. How can people find kindness if they can't even afford their own bills, right? And if we don't protect small businesses and bodegas and that bodega culture, even if here in Washington, D.C., we don't have bodegas, we have small businesses, we have people who have been here for generations, but at the same time, we need to allow room for new people to come in and be able to have a shop for 10 years because they can afford the rent, because those same people will make sure that their community is taken care of, right?
Absolutely.
So I hope that with this book, people don't see the ability to stifle or thwart or limit these entrepreneurs that are just trying to create something that'll make a local impact. Like, they don't want to be national businesses. They are literally just trying to impact their local community, the places where they live. And I hope that people reconsider, especially like local government and all over the nation, how we're abandoning our small business owners, because you never know. There might be another me right now who's struggling because somebody is not paying them, or decided you don't get a check right now, and you might never get that check because who's going to stop me, you know? And that person can't eat, and a bodega owner is like trying to consider, do I give them something for free, or do I still take that money because I need to pay rent, you know?
It's hard to be generous when you're fighting for the basics. As a business owner, it still can be, but there are limits. And I would say that in thinking about how these bodega owners, they kept tabs. They kind of like, all right, they seen what you're doing. That sense of community is something that it's a reminder of not being alone, that someone's keeping tabs on us, that you may be in a city that you may not know a lot of people, but you go to the same spot, you get your bagel, you get your lox and cream cheese, or you get your chopped cheese when you have a little extra money, or you get a little something, and that you build those build connections and community. And when you're a small business and you can take that time to get to know the people, it's a beautiful thing. When you're going to a new bodega for the first time, you're in a new city, you gotta go pick up. There are some people who may have not been to one. Do you have a general sort of plan when you go to something?
Yeah. Let's say if I were somebody who'd never been to a bodega, I've never been to New York City, and like this is my first foray into going into a bodega, I'd say that you want to try a sandwich, right? I would always start off with a roll, you know. Soft roll is not optimal, but it's preference, right? You can go two ways. You know, you could build your own sandwich. You can ask them, can I get, ham, cheese, lettuce, tomato, salt, pepper, vinegar, toasted, right? You can just ask them to toast the bread, or you can toast all of it together. In case you like cold deli meat. But they'll warm it up for you too. You'll be like, can you make sure that you, warm up my deli meat? And they're like, absolutely. You want melted cheese with that? And I'll be like, yes, But that's the preference, right? But I would say do that. Because usually it's very good, fresh, it's moving a lot, right? Like if you go into a bodega and you see like the cold case and the prepared foods and it's not looking pretty, it's not looking clean, just leave. Yeah. If they don't have a cat in the bodega, leave. Leave, because that's the manager and also that's pest control. So you need to leave, But yeah, like if you don't know what to look for in a bodega, you go in, you look, and if it's clean, if like lunch is clean, everything's clean, they care about what they're doing, regardless of how busy they are, right? Then you want to eat there, And 9 times out of 10, bodegas are like that, There's only been one time where I've seen like a bodega where I was like, this is a little questionable, but I was still like, can I get toasted monster on a roll, please? That's just me. Again, I threw caution in the wind and ordered 2 cups of habichuela con dulce. So, like, I have bigger fish to fry sometimes. But if you are more adventurous and you really are like, you know what, I really want to dig down deep for this bodega experience, you're going to order a chopped cheese on a hoagie, and you're going to just tell them, can I get a chopped cheese? Either you let them just prepare it. This is my first time trying to chop cheese. Can I get a chopped cheese, please? And they'll be like, don't worry, I got you. And they'll prepare it how you need it to be prepared, Or if you have cheese preferences, tell them your favorite cheese, whatever. But let them do their thing, their magic. It's worth it. It's delicious. It's amazing. They season it with special seasoning that I know what it is because I've been eating it my whole life. And I asked questions when I was like, you're too young for them to be like, yeah, she's not going to do anything with this. But I'm like, haha, just kidding. I can make it at home now, which is good because I live in D.C. My husband loves it. He's always like, oh, my God, thank God, Yeah. But, you get that, right? And you can eat it for breakfast if you're, food. Breakfast is just food, America is the only place where breakfast has to be, like, sweet. Everywhere else in the world, breakfast is very savory, But, you can order it for lunch. You can order it for dinner. You can order it as a midday snack if that's how you roll. I love that for you, if that's how it is. But, yeah, I would say, like, you get, your cheese on a hoagie roll, right? Like, longer. It's so much filling. Yummy.
That could be a two-meal. That could be a 2-meal party right there with a.
I wish I had that kind of self-control.
Some days for me, some days not at all.
Yeah. If me and my husband go in, we're like, 2 chopped cheese on a hoagie, please. And they're like, dang. I'm like, don't judge me. I haven't been here for a while, But yeah, that's what I would get, And obviously, you go to New York, you're either gonna have like an Arizona iced tea, or you're gonna try Snapple. Or if you can find New York specific soda brands, I would try that. Aside from that, like if it's breakfast time or even like midday, I'd say get a dollar coffee. It's pretty good. It's fresh. It's good. If you were lactose, you might be out of luck. Drink it black with some sugar. But not sure if people have adopted the oat milk, almond milk trend in bodegas yet. If they have, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I would be surprised.
Wow. But other than that, that's my go-to. You do that, and then maybe you can rummage through the chips. Utz is king, but you never know nowadays.
Word.
So many different brands of chips.
Word. The reason I ask that is because one of the easiest things a person can do to support your local businesses is go get something, be there, show up. And sometimes it's small businesses doing good food on the fly, fast. And it really sounds like bodegas were a really important lifeline. I mean, they're part of culture in the city, culture period. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story and just sharing what they mean to you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I hope more people go to bodegas.
Absolutely.
Buy my book, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Listening to Paola describe the role of bodegas in your community highlighted the importance of third spaces. Places like bodegas, also known as corner stores, have become more than just businesses, but hubs where people from all walks of life can build connection. When times were difficult, bodega owners watched out for Paola, remembering her preferences, offering support, and their care spoke to the sense of belonging and comfort that can be found in environments outside of home and work. Paola's story serves as a reminder of how local businesses, through small acts of kindness, form the backbone of our communities. They're where cultures interact and where those in need do not feel alone. It's my hope that listeners walk away from appreciating the riches and community bonds nurtured in these invaluable third spaces.
To wrap up, when's it dropping? Where can people find it? Yeah, share that out.
For sure. It is dropping October 1st. It's available for pre-order right now. If you pre-order, there's a few fun incentives coming along the way, and some exciting giveaways as well. So once you pre-order, you get entered to get something automatically when you pre-order. Once we have all of that set up and we get all those systems ready to go, and then you'll be able to also join in on these giveaways that I'll be hosting until we publish, and you can hold your book October 1st. So you can go to the publisher directly, and you can order from Union Square & Co., but it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop. Bookshop supports locally owned bookshops, so if you're trying to shop local, That's some place that I would look into. But all of these platforms, whether they're Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million, Amazon, Target, are supporting me directly. So whatever is convenient to you, please feel free to choose from any of these bodega flavors as you will. For folks in DC, Bold Fork Books has personalized signed copies from me where you'll be able to send in your personalized message and I'll write that for you in the book. You can get signed book plates in Now Serving in Los Angeles, in Book Larder in Seattle, Washington, and in Omnivore Books in San Francisco, California. And more will be added to that list. My goal is to get a few bookshops that are local to New York as well with these special book plates or personalized signed copies, because obviously I want to make sure that I'm not taking care of just my now home, but my former home as well. But either way, when you support these book pre-orders incentives, it helps me tremendously. It helps not because I'm getting money. When you pre-order a book, I'm not getting any money. Or when you buy a book, I'm not getting any money. Like, this is literally like a labor of love for the public, right? This is something that you get to have and hold and bake from and pass down from generation to generation, if you will it, right? But when you pre-order, it tells the publisher, like, hey, we got to get book 2 ready to go. It also helps other suppliers or people that will have these books in their stores to buy some so that you can walk into a store and get it in person as well. So thank you for all of your support if you do pre-order. And thank you if you walk into a bookstore later on at the end of this year to get that too.
I'm so excited to get my hands on this come October. Get one for all my fam so that I wouldn't say they're bakers, but at least they can start. Be like, listen, we got the flavor. Just like work on the technique. I'm excited to see what's next. And thank you for chatting with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for the rest of your episodes on this wonderful podcast.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the support.
And there you have it, folks. A journey through the aisles of the beloved bodegas with Paola Velez. It's moments like these that inspire and ground us in the beauty of everyday life. But before we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on something important that we touched upon: the power of third spaces in our communities. For those unfamiliar, third spaces are those places that are neither our homes, first spaces, nor our workplaces, second spaces. They are the coffee shops, parks, libraries, and yes, bodegas, where life unfolds in the most authentic and unguarded moments. These spaces offer more than just a transaction of goods. They provide a place for connection, for sharing stories, for a smile on a hard day, or a casual conversation that can brighten our mood. As Paola shared so poignantly today, these spaces play a critical role in our lives. They serve as the backdrop for community life, fostering relationships and a sense of belonging. In a world that feels increasingly fragmented and isolated, the value of these third spaces cannot be overstated. They are the fabric of our communities, offering neutral ground where all are welcome, where the diversity of a neighborhood can truly shine. Through the aroma of pastries, they serve as the backdrop for community life, fostering relationships and a sense of belonging. In a world that feels increasingly fragmented and isolated, the value of these third spaces cannot be overstated. They are the fabric of our communities, offering neutral ground where all are welcome, where the diversity of a neighborhood can truly shine. Through the aroma of pastries, the sound of a friendly greeting, or the familiar sight of a neighborhood cat lounging by the window, bodegas and similar spaces remind us of the richness and power of human connection. They embody the concept that it's not just where you are, but who you're with and the quality of those connections that truly enrich our lives. As we close today's episode, I invite you to think about your own favorite third space. What makes it special to you, and how does it contribute to your sense of community and belonging? And perhaps the next time you visit, take a moment to appreciate the role it plays not just in your life, but in the lives of everyone it touches. Thank you once again for joining me on Food Stories Told. I'm Stephanie Gravelisi, and let's continue to appreciate the small moments, the everyday spaces that bring us closer and make our communities stronger. Take care and see you soon.